Hello everyone, today I'm going to be doing a bit of a different video. Today's video is about 64-bit Longhorn builds. I'm doing this because Windows Vista was the first version of Windows with a 64-bit version, unless you count XP, which was only an Itanium system build thing, which, you get the... So, you know, I find like 64-bit Longhorn builds really interesting because, the 64-bit architecture was very new, and a lot of developers didn't understand it yet. So you have builds of Longhorn that are very different from the 32-bit builds. So in this video, we're going to be looking at every 64-bit build of pre-reset Longhorn available. It's not that many. I think there are like 5. So anyway, let's get on with it. So, the first build we're going to be looking at is Longhorn Build 4051. This is the earliest 64-bit that, at the very least, I could find. It was compiled on October 1st, 2003, which is quite late, considering that the earliest 32-bit build is 3683, which was compiled on July 23rd, 2002. So that's about like nearly like a whole year gap between these two. Installation wise, things went pretty alright, but there was this one error that I kept getting no matter what the hell I tried, this Bluetooth error thing. And this wasn't just a problem with this build, like most builds I installed during this video's recording just had this Bluetooth error. I have no idea why. I tried searching like every folder on the CD-ROM. There is no Bluetooth. I don't understand why was it trying to install Bluetooth in the first place. I have no idea. I'm fairly certain this thing didn't even have Bluetooth on it. So, what? It also seemed that the operating system didn't detect any monitor settings, or just didn't have the drivers for it. So for the majority of like the installation and the operating system look around, all of it's just in 16-bit color. I managed to install a driver later, but for most of the video it's just very crispy looking images. You could take one of these, like, you could take a screenshot from this video and make it a deep fried meme, just Windows bottom text. Another thing of note, this thing is very lackluster compared to the 32-bit build. One of the most notable things being the sidebar is completely gone. Like, it's not like 3683 where it's just disabled by default. No, it's completely gone. Which is very odd, but again, it's probably because, like I said, developers didn't know a lot about the 64-bit architecture at the time, and everything's a bit of a mess, really. Another interesting thing that I think needs to be noted, 3D Pinball has this weird graphics bug where there's just no... 3D Pinball has this weird graphics bug where all of like the moving images and everything just looks a bit off. I don't know how to describe it, it just looks weird. It also wasn't just the graphics driver that was affected. Every single driver seemed to just revert back to some sort of default. I could not get this thing to connect to internet or play any audio of any sort. So yeah, that was very interesting. One thing I will say about this, it was better than the checked build. So checked builds are basically debug versions. Regular Windows Longhorn builds are designed for like professional usage, or like, you know, they're designed to work in some sort of environment, you know, whether it be like home edition or professional edition. Checked builds are more really just like for developers so that they can monitor, you know, what's going on, why it does things, and so it requires a bit of effort to get it to work. So installation started off great. I lied, it didn't. It turns out that you need to patch the whole, basically like nearly half the disk to get it to work. Once you can get the thing to boot, you have to restart it. Now restarting would be like, you know, it would be a really, it's not such a bad thing. But it is such a bad thing when you reboot and it blue screens again. Like the second time. And I can't patch the CD-ROM because it's booting directly from the hard drive. Which means I had to manually edit the goddamn like configuration file for, like, is it boot.sys? I think it's boot.sys. I tried doing this on like my host PC because you can connect like virtual hard disk files to your regular computer on VMware. That didn't seem to work, so I had to do it in a Windows XP VM. Look at the cool Game Boy theme. Look at it. It's great. After that was done, installation went smoothly. It froze and I had to restart the entire thing again. And on top of that, the Bluetooth system thing, the could not find Bluetooth, that was still there. Other than that, a lot of it was extremely similar to the regular 64-bit build, to the point where like I even had to like reinstall the same display driver so I could see things in some form of color. An interesting thing though, they had a debug version of Solitaire on there, which I just think is really cool. It's just so like weird and fun. Like there was just an option to win the game in like one of the menus. You could just automatically win the game. I've always wanted to win a game of Solitaire, and with this, I don't even have to try. Funnily enough, a lot of other programs said that they were like debug versions, but I couldn't tell if there were any sort of differences in like any of the programs. If there are any differences, like you can tell me in the comments and I will look at it, and I don't know, maybe I'll make a response video to this like I did for Sonic 3. Anyway, I think that was about all that there was to see in Longhorn 4051. So let's move on to the next one. The next build in the range is build 4074. While I was recording this, I thought having 4074 so close to 4051 would be a bit weird, and then I looked it up and it turns out there's like no builds between like 4051 and 4074. But anyway, 4074 was much of the same really. There were a few improvements here and there. It actually was able to detect my video card or whatever, so we were able to get 32-bit color working out of the box, and we still had the goddamn Bluetooth thing. There was a point in recording where the entire thing just froze. I think like we were doing like 3D pinball or something, and like I just spent like 20 minutes dragging the task manager around because it did like a pretty defect. A thing that was added though was the Jade theme, which is really nice. It's basically like the Aero Basic. So that's a pretty nice addition. It actually looks really nice without the sidebar on. Yeah, there still isn't a sidebar, which I find odd. None of these have a sidebar. I just find that's like really strange. 4074 also had a checked build, but that sort of blue screened when we were trying to install it, and at that point I was recording for about nearly 2 hours, and I was just about tired, and I couldn't care less. I'm pretty sure if we could get it to install, it would just be the same thing as the 4051 check build, but with the changes I've just talked about. Anyway, let's get on to the next build. The last build of 64-bit pre-reset Longhorn that we have is build 4083. This used to be the only build that didn't have a 32-bit counterpart, but that was actually changed recently. Back in February, a person by the name of Grabberslasher, who owns a blog called ux.unleaked, recently released his entire repository of Longhorn builds. I think there are about like 20 of them, which is quite a huge leak compared to like the amount of Longhorn builds we've gotten in like the past 5 years. I think there's only been like 4. So it's been a pretty big thing for the beta operating system community. It's a lot like that Sonic month thing I covered back in 2019, or sort of covered. Really, I just talked about the Sonic 3 prototype for 40 minutes, but anyway, Forza 83 is actually a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. It was the only one that had the actual, like, pre-installation environment set up. I'm taking these images from 4074's setup because I didn't notice that it wasn't actually recording anything while it was installing. So all I've got of the installation is just a blank screen of me narrating, and none of it is actually that good. Birds, they're really small, you know. Birds, they're just too small. But once we'd gotten that whole thing solved, yeah, it was actually pretty good. There are a lot of weird sort of quirks with this build. One thing being that the Windows Classic theme is, it's broken. You can't set the theme as Windows Classic, otherwise it'll just show this error. WordPad and Outlook Express won't start at all, neither will Help and Support. Yeah, one of the weird things I managed to get on here, this didn't have a desktop by default. It was just an orange background for some reason. In the 32-bit build, it actually shows the tree background that was used in a lot of the later Longhorn builds as a sort of like finale. I tried to like delete the entire operating system, but that didn't work. Like it's still booted and it's still there. There were a few quirks that I wasn't able to do because I was running virtualization software. Like for example, if I've heard that if you install this on like physical hardware, then the fans run at like max speed by default. So I think out of all of these 64-bit Longhorn builds we've looked at today, I think this is by far my favorite. It's rather weird in its own sort of way. It's just a sort of representation of how completely messed up Windows Longhorn got during development time. There's just so much stuff here that's just really weird, like the CD drive being recognized as a local disk. So anyway, I think that's about all that I have time for today. Sorry for not making a video in absolutely ages. I sort of took a bit of a short break before doing this video, and then when I did start doing the video, I just suddenly became like horrendously busy. So hopefully I'll be able to make more content in less of a time than it took for me to make this. But anyway, yeah, have a nice day. If you enjoyed this video, then tell me if you'd want more in the comments. Other than that, I don't really have much else to say. Have a nice day. Make sure to drink one milk. Only one. No other milk. Anyway, bye.